All right, welcome to Issues Unfiltered podcast again. Thank you so much for always staying with us and sharing and liking our page. And we cannot have done this without you. Remember that we are always live on YouTube 7:30 p.m. on Saturdays for you to join us in. And so, still talking about consent and consequences, our season series under this particular conversation on safe abortion. Last week we talked more about, is it a yes or a no consent conversation. But this week, we are looking at, just beyond all of that drama on yes and no and consent. What does the law say? You get where is the legal protection for women in this? Is it law versus policy? So a lot of people are asking questions. Some people are even asking, is abortion legal in Nigeria? Who do we go to for abortion? What is the access code? Where do we sort of look at the fault lines? So today we're going to be looking at all of that, and let me not even spoil the juice because he's going to give all the juice of the detail. I'm going to be having this conversation with an amazing voice oracle, and I call her that because she has really, shaped the conversation on women's rights, especially when it comes to representation, both at the community level and looking at the legal lenses. And I'm not talking about anybody else than Barrister Choma Unikea Uko. And she also has her own podcast. Do you want to tell the name? She will tell you the name herself. I'm not going to be the one to tell you that. Not on. Yes, we are talking issues unfiltered. Joma, welcome to the podcast. How are you? It's great to
Thank you
see
very
you.
much, Ada. Always a pleasure to be on the conversation with you.
It's always deep and unnerving.
I mean,
So
frank, yes,
yes,
at least.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that's important.
So, this conversation, I don't know if you follow, there's this conversation online that talked about, we talked about it some weeks ago, a youth couple who died from an abortion procedure that, she had presented to her by her lover, who was also what they call the local coordinator for the NYSC at the camp. And so they were in a love affair. She got pregnant. He took her there. Procedure from one thing led to another. She died. Okay, the case is still in courts, so apparently we can't talk much about it. But issues like that have come up. Parents have found out that some of their daughters induce abortion at home. They don't even know the process. So let's even find out why the secrecy and what the law does to protect. Because there's been a lot of questions on, is abortion legal? Who is allowed to do it? Where do you do it? What happens if you're caught? So that question on if you're caught, it now puts a lot of demand on morality and expectations on the women alone. But let's start from what the law says, Choma. Where does the law come in when you talk about abortion rights, unsafe abortions?
Well, just as in many things, while the law legislates on human life, on living, and all of those, but I must say that it appears that maybe due to our patriarchal society, most of our laws have been framed in a manner that doesn't pay much attention to the interests,
Okay.
the, permit me to even use the word preference, the inclinations of women. It has been more like, the society shaping rules and regulations to, to guide women without paying attention to what their needs are. Now, anything that preserves life ordinarily is good, right? It's progressive, it's
Well,
positive. Anything that
yes, absolutely.
preserves life, we'll say is good.
Yes.
So let us imagine that the intention of the law is to preserve life, sorry. But the question now should be, whose life are we prioritizing? Is it the life of the woman or the life of this fetus? Well, the jury is still out as to whether that is human fully yet or not.
Okay.
But
Okay.
assuming they are both human, are we prioritizing the life of the woman or are we prioritizing the life of the fetus? The law as we have it in Nigeria currently criminalizes abortion,
Okay.
putting it plainly.
Criminalize. So what you're saying is that anybody caught is going against the law.
It is an offense.
You can go to jail.
The way our law is now, it is an offense for a person to just willfully procure an abortion. What the law says is that whether you're looking at the criminal code or the penal code, but I'll focus a bit more on the penal code, which applies in the FCT where we are. What the law says is that it is not permissible for a woman to procure an abortion. It is not permissible.
Even when her life is at risk.
I'm building up. It is not, I'm talking about the general now.
Okay,
The
okay.
general provision is that it is not permissible for a woman to procure abortion. It is not permissible for anybody, and this will include maybe a medical practitioner or somebody in that role, you know, helping a woman get an abortion or, you know, conducting an abortion procedure on a woman, that. The exemption the law allows is where it is intended to protect, to save the life of the woman or that of the fetus. That is the only, not save, but where for health reasons, it becomes imperative that that happens. If you go by that, because it is narrow and not clear, it's a bit ambiguous when you say, not ambiguous in a sense that allows for innovative interpretations.
Okay.
When the law says except for health reasons, what they usually will look at is, maybe the woman was going to lose her life because of the pregnancy. The pregnancy is such that maybe she's at risk of, she's running an elevated blood pressure such that there's imminent risk and things like that. But we forget that when we interpret or when we want to look at what life is not just the presence of oxygen or the presence of a heartbeat.
Indeed.
Life
Indeed.
is about the quality of that life, really. Because it is not enough that a person is alive and they're in a vegetative state. It is not enough that a person is alive and they're in a state where, you know, they lose dignity of their person, which is a fundamental right. It is not enough that a person is alive and that life loses meaning, is one that suffers some of the things the person can't deal with, including stigmatization and the rest of it. And I'm going somewhere. I say this because if we say it should be for purposes of preserving life or saving the woman, have we considered a situation where a woman is a victim of an unplanned pregnancy? Why I'm using the word victim is because a woman may enter into a consensual relationship not intending to get pregnant by that, but in that case, I may not really call her a victim. I'm using the word victim because there are non-consensual, situations that foists a pregnancy on a woman or a girl, which may include maybe incestuous relationships,
True.
Rapes,
True.
and stuff like that.
That is even where I'm confused.
So in such situations, the greater question shouldn't be that narrow interpretation of saving her life as to, saving life in the oxygen sense of it.
Okay.
But in the quality of it, which is why it is interesting to know that just recently, sometime last year, the Federal High Court gave what I'll call a novel, judgment, where the court held that the right to the right of a woman to procure abortion services in a situation that is unplanned. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not quoting what the judgment was, but I'm just paraphrasing so that we'll get a sense of what that judgment said. That judgment said that it is concomitant with the woman's right to her fundamental right, for her to be able to safely access abortion services in such a situation as where she has been foisted with an unplanned pregnancy due to incest, rape, or such.
So is this thing in the law? Because the law just outrightly says it's a crime, right? So is this thing now in the law to make an exception?
It is in the law. Let me explain how it is in the law. That is where innovative interpretation comes in. That is where progressive activism comes in, judicial activism.
By that time, somebody don't die now.
Oftentimes, unfortunately, because before we can have those who deserve or need this interventions access them, means that the public needs to even be aware that such an interpretation has been made by the court, they need to be aware that it is now permissible in XYZ situations. That interpretation needs to be, people need to be educated on it, enlightened about its existence. Otherwise, the people who can safely offer these services will be unwilling to offer it because they realize that in offering it, it already means that it's a risky gamble. They may end up in prison. They may lose their license. A number of, 1,001 things can happen to them. So unless they know that there is a window that has been most likely opened, because the window was just where it is to save the life of the woman.
Okay, so wait, let me come in here because, again, I'm thinking about the constitutional framework, our constitution, right? And it says it guarantees right to life, dignity, and health. So how does it now, interact with the restrictive reproductive rights when it now comes to this law to say women outrightly cannot procure abortion, even though it is a right in the constitution to say you have to have dignity? It's
Let me playing the devil's advocate now, so that maybe we appreciate, we see a broader view of the background to the different
dynamics.
arguments.
Yes.
Now, our laws provide for the protection of life, including the life of a fetus. Under the Child's Right Act, right to life extends to a fetus. So it means that the law is not looking at the carrier. The law is not looking at the woman in that moment. The law is looking at this fetus, which is perceived as human, that cannot speak for itself, because I can't even say himself or herself now, which cannot speak for itself. The law is now holding brief for that fetus and seeking to protect that fetus. I'm not saying that is wrong, but I'm saying that where that protection ignores the realities, the, competing rights of the woman who is, that is not to say that the fetus is not, but who fully is, for the benefit of this fetus who we are hoping to be, I think that is not quite sensitive. I think that is not quite considerate. And something makes me believe that this is not so much about preserving, this fetus. It is also about perceiving women as chattels, perceiving them as, having lesser rights.
So they are not at the center of the protection.
They are not. They are not the focus. The focus is not to protect the woman. And I'll tell you something. If you look at the penal code, the penal code makes provision that where a person unintentionally causes, forcefully causes a woman to lose a baby, the penalty is about 3 years. Yes, the operative word there may be unintentionally, but forcefully is also there. Why would a person be in a situation where they forcefully cause a woman to lose a baby, even if it was not intended? And I mean by unintentionally, it could be that this person didn't even know that this woman was pregnant. But let us imagine a domestic violence situation where a man is beating a woman, where a woman is being subjected to, very cruel and hurtful situations that causes her to lose a baby. The penalty is 3 years because it was not intended. They're ignoring the forcefully that happened there, the cruelty that may have led to that situation. They're looking at, okay, he didn't intend for her to lose the baby, which is an easy defense for anybody to plead. And then they get away with a tap on the wrist for 3 years. Then that same law says, where it happens that the person knew that the woman was pregnant too, now the penalty can extend to 5 years.
5 years.
Now ask yourself, this is the same law that actually says that for this woman to go and procure this thing for herself now, just for you to know that the focus is not on the woman. When she goes to procure it for herself, there's a 7 years penalty that she may be liable to. There is also the fine that can happen. And then In a situation where somebody does it to her without her consent and all of that, the law first starts with saying the person can be liable to life imprisonment, and then does a very drastic descent by saying, or a lesser term. A lesser term without prescribing a minimum. So a lesser term can actually be 2 years if the lawyer is able to
Or
make the
less.
right arguments and the court is inclined to exercising its discretion as permitted by the law. So what it tells you is that the well-being of the woman, the right of the woman, the dignity of the woman is not perceived as a center stage consideration. All that matters is that we maintain, those appearances, those do I want to call them? I don't know. I don't want to use a foul language, but those things that we do in our society where we just hide our head like the ostrich and pretend that we're all morally upright and pretend that we think about morality, we think about rights when it is the next person's obligation.
So let me come in here because the more you talk about it, the more you open up a Pandora's box. So let's look at the fact that I hear you talk about morality, but then again, the issue of culture collide with expression of law to a large extent. If you had the power, perhaps the consciousness to change 3 things in Nigeria's, let's say the penal code, for instance, as a way forward, especially to ensure that unsafe abortions no longer happen, because Nigeria is now ranked as the most dangerous place to give birth, and it is precipiced on the number of unsafe abortions that are happening. And for us to even deal with that, we have to look back at the law. So if you had the power to change some of these indices, what would you be looking at in your recommendation?
I'll be looking at expanding the interpretation as to what saving a life means. Since we do not have any social structure, any formal social, safeguards that can help women who are foisted with these situations, who takes care of that child when that child is born? You insist she must have that baby. You don't care the circumstances in which that pregnancy
Occurred.
and then you insist she must have it. But after she has the baby, she's the one who has the burden of ensuring that that child goes to school up to secondary JS3 as prescribed under the UBIC Act. She's the one who must ensure that she, nurtures that child, best interest of that child. The state has little responsibility. Until that burden shifts, until the state is able and willing to step in and take that responsibility, it becomes unconscionable to foist that duty on an unwilling person. From when we were young, we had things like people using hangers.
Yes.
Very crude
But what we
practices.
want to say is that it should be safe, because unsafe abortion creates more secrecy
And more harm.
and more harm.
Yes,
Indeed.
it creates more harm.
Indeed. Okay, I think this is a safe place to have this conversation for a stop now, because you've made the recommendations, and I'm sure that those who are watching and listening would, especially the lawmakers, and I think institutions like FIDA, yourself, the NBA, can also see how we can have like an open door conversation, even with the policymakers themselves and the healthcare, because again, the absence of institutions that matter in conversations creates a 360-degree approach.
No, they must be part of it. And really,
yes.
I think a blueprint is already there. With what we have in the Maputo Protocol.
Yes.
We don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Absolutely.
That is a good template
and platform to start with.
Because what the Maputo Protocol has prescribed covers the field. Why are we not domesticating it? Particularly after the African Charter on Human and People's Rights have been domesticated. This is a protocol that derives from that charter. So it should be domesticated so that it can take full effect in Nigeria.
All right, domesticate it, let it take full effect, and please, the things that are not done properly and shrouded in secrecy increases the dangers of it and those who access it. And I think that when we look at the statistics, even the younger girls, especially people who are probably unguided and who
Exactly.
don't have a lot of literacy around abortion rights and what it means. So you've heard it is illegal under the Nigerian law. However, again, when you look at some of the conditionalities, there are some exceptions. She's talked about incest, she talked about rape, and again, she also made recommendations about policies that can guide in terms of making sure that it is created around a sense of control, so that not just anybody just walks in and says, "Oh, I want an abortion today," but women's lives should matter first. Their protection should matter first, and that is where she clocks it. Let's clock to that. Clock it. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Choma, for coming on the podcast. And what's that your podcast name again? Intercourse.
No, it is the late night
Oh,
intercourse.
it even has late nights to
Oh,
it.
yes,
The
late
late
night
night intercourse.
intercourse.
Do you know what intercourse means?
It's an intercourse, of course, an intellectual intercourse.
Okay,
Oh,
okay.
yes.
Okay, thank you. And intellectual intercourse, eh? Intellectual, oh. All right, so that's how much we can take to. My name is Adora. I'll see you again next weekend. Please keep it coming. Just log in there, share, like, and keep watching. We'll see you again. And remember, every woman's life matters. See ya.